So the subject today, friends, is as follows. It's tied in the parsha. The parsha deals with the complex laws of purity and impurity. These laws do not apply nowadays, for the most part, because they applied only when the temple existed, and somebody was ritually impure. What difference does it make if he's impure or pure? We mean for the following only: entering the temple precincts, A, B, consuming sacrificial food, meat that was offered on the altar. Certain parts of it are eaten by the one who brought it. If a person is in a state of ritual impurity, he may not partake of sacred meat. There's no temple, these laws don't apply. The only laws of purity and impurity that are still in full force today is the nida, a woman during marriage, during the cycle of a menstrual cycle. Without going to all of the detail, husband and wife separate, and she must go to the mikveh at the end a week after her cycle concludes. That's the only laws of tum and tahara that still are in force. Now, the custom is by many, and in Chabad as follows, that a mourner, I'm sharing this with you because I'm a mourner, and it's this week's parsha. So you may notice, if you hung right to the end of davening, that the end of davening, after we've finished the morning service and said Tehillim, the mourner says aloud a Mishnah, and then a final Kaddish. Just to tell you what we do, it's the back of the city, you can look it up. Every day, 3 times a day, this is the Chabad custom, the mourner learns 2 chapters of Mishnayos. We actually learn it before davening, not to hold everybody up while I'm reading it. And I just don't learn the last Mishnah, and I say the last Mishnah followed by Kaddish. Why is the mourner doing this? Because Mishnah has a special connection to Neshama, the soul. You can hear the same letters. Mishnah, which means Mishnah is the primary text of the Talmud. Mishnah has the same letters, Nun, Shin, Mem, as Neshama. Learning Mishnayos causes elevation to the soul. Just to tell you also, it's this widespread custom. When somebody passes away and you come to the Shiva, they have papers, and now it's online, and the community divides up the entire 60 tractates to learn by the Shloshim for this person. We did it for my mother, of course, and this is common. In addition to that, her sons, me and my 2 brothers, I'm taking an ambitious project for the course of the year to learn between the 3 of us the entire Mishnayos. There are 6 orders, so I have to learn, each one of us learns 2 orders, there are 3 of us learning. It's a big undertaking, of course, it's a privilege. Okay, so having said that, so in the back of the Siddur, in the Chabad Siddur, there are 2 chapters that the mourner learns every day, 3 times a day, and concludes it and says Kaddish. One is chapter 24 of Tractate Kalim. What's the story there? I'm going to zero in on it. Kalim means vessels. Vessels can contract ritual impurity. If a person is impure, now how does a person become impure? There are many ways and many levels of defiling agencies. Touching a dead body is one way. Being under the same roof as a dead body renders one impure. There are certain 8 specific animals, when their carcass, crawling animals, when the carcass touches the person, he becomes impure. And then there's, as we'll learn, certain discharges. Discharges from the male organ. This is a discharge that happens. I don't know if there's any English term to describe it. I don't even think it happens nowadays. It's a kind of a seminal discharge, but it's tinged with red. It doesn't happen as a result of desire or even a conscious thought, but there's this flow. Point that right away. The commentaries say this comes as a divine, quote unquote, consequence, quote unquote, punishment, as a result of excessive indulgence in the sexual, the sensual. Doesn't happen anymore nowadays. Many of these things the Torah described don't happen. It only happen to people of very elevated stature, held to a much higher standard, and things happened. They have a very high tolerance to which is wrong, and therefore the body reacted. And we have a very low tolerance, and therefore we can sin, and there's no reaction. For example, we're reading now this week's parsha about the skin blotches that would happen on the body. Hasn't happened since the time of the first Beis Hamikdash. It only happens to people of a higher stature. because it's kind of flushed, can't tolerate it inside. You gossiped, and it's something that is so allergic to that he flushes it to the surface, and it manifests as a discoloration of the sin. For us, we have a high tolerance for corrupted behavior. It stays inside. So many of these things, if not all of them, that the Torah speaks of don't happen nowadays. We're speaking the theory of it and the spiritual message. So what was I just saying? That one of the way a person becomes impure is called a zov, whereas this flow from the male organ. Now, so if such a person who's impure, right, because he touched something, if he touches a vessel, that vessel becomes impure. And what's the practical? So it's impure. So if you're eating off it, you become it. Someone else who was pure will touch that vessel, they become impure. They'd have to go to the mikveh before they would go to the temple or eat of sacrificial food. So the Mishnah speaks of chapter 24. How many Mishnahs are there? 3 kinds of vessel and their respective laws. And that is as follows. Just get it up. Oh, here it is. So to understand the principle, what kind of vessel is subject to contract ritual impurity? A functioning vessel, one that is used as a container. The more it's a container, the more it's subject to ritual impurity. If it's not a container, just something you just put down on or serves no real function, it's ornamental, it's symbolic, it's decorative, or it doesn't, you might write on it, it's a writing tablet, but it can't hold anything, for example, it's immune to ritual impurity. If it's decorative, it's immune to ritual impurity. So the Mishnah goes through, the chapter goes through, how many Mishnahs is it? 17 Mishnahs describing 17 different vessels on 3 levels. If it's like this or that, its laws differ accordingly. So here, I want to explain this spiritually. So begin like this. There are 3 kinds of shields, which differ with respect to how subject they are to ritual and cleanliness becoming tamei. There's a bent shield. What's the bent shield? This was a shield that the warrior used in battle, and it was a wraparound shield. So it's a vessel, it's functional. So for sure, it's subject to becoming ritually impure. What's unique about the shield is they also used it as a bedding to sleep on. Yeah, they used to fight during the day, whenever it was, but during the lull in the battle, this shield also served as a bed. So you have to understand like this. So, as I said before, there's different levels of ritual impurity. On one level, the most severe form is the one I told you before, the zov. The zov. Someone who has this discharge is whether we see the most severe form of impurity, that for him, mikveh is not enough. The ordinary mikveh that we have, which is a collection of rainwater. He has to immerse in a natural spring. It doesn't apply nowadays, but although there are some mikvahs here in the city, I think someone has a natural spring, you dig really, it's very expensive. You got to dig really, you got to find it. And the water's not from the rain, but that's the highest form of mikveh that a zov requires. Why? Because, as we just told you, because the commentaries explain, this is an impurity that comes as a result of a person's indulgence in the mind and in practice in sexuality. Now, sexual things, just to say, sex isn't bad, but it's very powerful. It's very powerful. Why? Because it engages the deepest part of a person. Why is that? Because we're all born as a result of a sexual act. Where do you come from? Because a man and woman got together and did that. It's the deepest part of who we are. I don't have to tell anybody how deep it is. Wars have been fought over it, lives destroyed, etc. I mean, it's the deepest, the most powerful drive. And so therefore, it has the potential to be the highest, most noble part of our humanity. If it's sacred and husband and wife and there's mikveh and it's respectful and we engage in sexuality in a selfless way. Selfless means it's for the wife, etc. this is a subject that needs more treatment, but we all get a sense of it, or it can be the most degrading. It's the most elevating or degrading, as we see also. Women can be objectified, and that's what society does, despite all of its claims that we live in a modern, liberal, enlightened time. The objectification of women has never been greater. By Hollywood, which is the most hypocritical element of our world, the claim for liberalism and equality, that's where they're objectified like no other place. Objects of sexual objects. So that's the most degrading thing possible. You turn a human being into an object to ogle and to use and abuse, or sexuality can be the most refined and elevated and sublime means by which people connect, and man to God. And man to God. So this impurity we describe now is a result of the abuse of human sexuality. So it's in a sense the most severe kind of impurity that needs not just an ordinary mikveh, but a natural spring, the deepest rejuvenating water. Another thing you have to know, what's unique about the zov, that's what it means. Someone has this discharge. We don't find this by any other impurity. Anything the person sits or lies on, even if there's no direct contact. If I'm impure not from the discharge, another kind of impurity, and I'm sitting on something, so directly becomes impure, but there's something intervening, but I'm actually in contact with is impure, the thing below isn't. Not true of the zov. You're sitting on a couch and there's 100 pillows, all the pillows and everything that he sits on, boom, everything becomes impure. So we see it's very severe. So let's look at the Mishnah. So the Mishnah says, there are three kinds of what? Of shield. The shield that is a wraparound shield, that's not only does he use it as a function to, the battle, but also to sit or lie on. One more detail you have to know. If a zov will sit on the table, if he'll touch it directly is one thing. But if he's leaning on the table through an intervening thing, he doesn't make the table impure because it's not made to sit on. It's only those things that are made to lie or sit on, that he lies or sits on, even with many intervening substances, they'll become ritual impurity. Now, this shield is made to lie on, says the Mishnah, that Tomei Midras, this wraparound shield is subject to the highest form of impurity of the zov because it's made to sleep. It's made to lean on, to sleep on, to sit on. That's one kind of shield. Then there's the shield which is called a kunpain. What's that? A shield used by swordsmen in their swords play. Is it functional? Yes. But it's not used to what? To sit or lie on. So this is subject to the regular impurity. If a person touches a dead body and he touches it, it'll become ritually impure. It's subject to a lesser form of impurity. Not the zov, for the simple reason it's not made, it's not a wraparound thing. It just has a regular function as a utensil. Again, there's all kinds of other examples here. 3 kinds of wagons, 3 kinds of kneading troughs, 3 kinds of boxes, 3 kinds of leather chests. Same pattern exists. What's the third thing? Then there's a third shield that is impervious to impurity because it's purely decorative. What is that? And the small shield used by the Arabs in festivities and in sports is not subject to any uncleanliness, but remains altogether clean. Why? Because it's purely decorative. There's no real protection. They're not actually fighting. It's just sports. It's just a show. And that's the pattern of all. Now, why, first of all, why is the mourner reading this? Because each Mishnah ends with a vessel that is pure. After death, the soul's going through a purification process. Cleansing. So we're learning a Mishnah that 17 cases, they're pure. The final word is pure. So aside from being Mishnah, Neshama, the subject matter is purity. Okay, now the few minutes we have left, I want to explain this spiritually. This is based on one paragraph of a whole beautiful, long, several talks that I gave on the subject over the years that they made into kind of a whole booklet. Extraordinary. So here we go. So 3 vessels, let's remember them. There's the wraparound vessel that he sleeps in, that protects him on all sides. There's the one that is a vessel functional in fighting and swordplay. And there's the third vessel. It's not functional, it's decorative. 3 levels in the service of God. What are the 3 levels? So the level number 1 is, and the Rabbi we're all holding by it, life is a battle. This is a guy, he's in the war, the first level. He needs to be protected when he's up, when he's sleeping. The reason that it's a wraparound is that it's a surprise attack, it's some protection. So this is a person, let's describe this person. This is all of us. The world is a constant war. There's temptations everywhere. And we have to be always on guard, 24 hours. So such a person, we need a wraparound shield. We've got to make sure wherever we go, we're insulated, we're protected. We're not going to cross any lines because we're tempted to all the time. Whatever, money, this, whatever it is. And we're subject to the most potentially, the greatest kind of impurity. So be careful. That's one level. Again, life is a battle. Why is life a battle? Because my personal animal soul, my sensual soul, my evil inclination, 3 words for the same thing, it's not refined, it's pretty much unchecked, and I'm constantly just trying to control myself. I can't change my impulses. My impulses, everything tempts me like everybody else does. Everybody's always tempted. That's the vast majority of people. Right? So therefore I have to be constantly wrap around and protect myself. Then there's a higher level. There's a higher level. What was this shield now? This was a shield. The swordsman in this sword's play. What's his attitude to life? This is a higher level. And that is, he doesn't see the world as an enemy. It's not a battlefield. But he sees the whole world is just there. It's a game, as it were. It's only there he's not impressed by it. It doesn't attract him. It's only there to bring out the best in him, his best performance. That's why it's there. It's to be resisted. But the attitude is clearly front and center for this person. It's only why the swords play. What are they doing? They're honing their skills. Not really afraid I'm going to get killed. This is a person, he's not going to sin. He's gone beyond that. The first guy is in their battle. He can get mortally wounded, ritually impure. It's a real war. This is a higher level. He's not tempted by the world this way. So why does the world here? It's only there just to bring out my strengths. So such a person is impervious to this worst kinds of impurity. What could he be impure by? Death, which is just a normal, natural, terrible sins aren't going to touch him. But he's human, and he could be subject to a less death, which is just natural. The dead body is the law of nature. This is not something unnatural, like that discharge. So that kind of impurity could be affected by. So again, let's hone in. What's this level of a person? This level of the person is, he doesn't see the world there. He looks at it and says, it doesn't tempt him. In the same way it does the first level. He's a human being. So why am I here? I'm just here to grow. His world, what does he enjoy? He enjoys Yiddishkeit. He enjoys spirituality. That is his world. To make it very clear, the first guy really enjoys the material. That's if he would not keep himself in check, he'd be involved in the sensual and the physical, and that would define his life. This guy, he likes learning and his world is the world of spirituality. He's not an angel. He's not an angel. She's got to be careful that the natural contamination of the world shouldn't creep in. Okay. But he's in a higher place. It's a sword's play. I'm only here. The world is only there just to bring out my deeper connection to God. He waits for Shabbos. His real enjoyment is when he's sitting and learning. That's his world. The third level, it's an ornament, decorative. It's a show. What's this? The highest level of service of God, not for me. to cause play. What's a show? You're entertaining the people that watch you. The whole world is, why is he here? To bring pleasure to God, to perform for God. The first two is the self. First guy, the world's a war. The second one, the world's not a war, but it's still a challenge in order to make me appreciate the beauty of Yiddishkeit. That's the second level. That's why it's there. But this whole world is the world of the spiritual. But what's common to the first two is the self. What's motivating him is his self. Keep the Yitzhahara away. Enjoy Yiddishkeit. The first guy is fighting with evil. The second one is more the development within holiness. But it's all about the self. The third one that the Mishnah says, no impurity in the world can touch this person. Don't worry about him. Because his whole motivation is not his reward, not his battle, not his victory, not his spiritual growth. It's entertainment. To entertain and bring pleasure to Hashem. This is the ultimate selfless level. And this is hinted to in Ditzas Haravayim. The word Haravayim, which means Arab, also means Arab, sweet. Sweet. His whole avoid is to cause sweetness and pleasure to Hashem above. Such a person who is selfless, you can put him anywhere. He's impervious to impurity. It's not about him altogether. He's beyond the struggle. He's not in the battle. The first one is battling. I'm going to rephrase that. The first one battles with evil. The second one's battle is in good itself, higher and higher and higher. But it's still engaged in some kind of battle. The third one is what's fighting? I'm not here for me at all. I'm here to serve Hashem. This is the highest level. And such a person, like I said, anywhere you place him under any circumstance, he's not going to contract because not about me. And this is the goal that we all need to aspire to, each one on their level. Okay. God willing, we'll continue. Hope it gives some measure of understanding. Yeah.